Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea. We had two games that, it couldn't be much better. The two games came down to basically one play, both games. In the college football semifinals, playoffs, we'll just kind of recap both games and provide some of our thoughts. We'll start off with Michigan beating Alabama in overtime. Korea, what were your kind of big takeaways from how this game played out and kind of how you saw the game, turn out?
I mean, this was definitely, I kind of expected this to be a very defensive game. We talked about Alabama being one of the best defenses in the country, stopping the run and the pass. You knew definitely it was going to be a challenge, stopping, Blake Corum to as much as you can. Obviously, Blake Corum, one of the best running backs in football, and, in this Michigan offense. And, I was just, certain, or at least certain enough that, this Alabama offensive line, even though, as, they mentioned, in the broadcast, and we've seen, Alabama offensive line has struggled at times, this season, and I was hoping that they would do just enough against the Michigan pass rush, which is one of the best, if not the best, in the country, and it was all Michigan all day in terms of that front, in terms of the battle in the trenches. So that's kind of the reason Michigan was able to come back. They were down 20-13, able to drive on that last possession, tie the game, and then force overtime, and then they get the first score with the Blake Corum rushing touchdown, and then Jalen Milroe and the Alabama offense comes back on the field, and they got the fourth and goal, and you can clearly, the thing that frustrated me the most is that the play was supposed to be a QB counter that go to the left, and this dude went straight into the gap that was closed, slipped and fell on a fourth and goal when there was a clear opening that if you just follow your guard, the guard was going cross counter, and there was a wide open hole. He had an open space to tie the game and, potentially, send this game to a double overtime or maybe try to win it, with a 2-point conversion. Who knows? But, that was just a tough way to end it for Alabama. But Michigan survived overtime. They get the win. It was Alabama's offense just could not do anything. We both had Bama on the money line, so it was tough just to, see Alabama just not do anything offensively. We didn't hear much of Isaiah Bond. We did see a lot of Jace McClellan, and, he had some big key touchdowns, obviously, big key runs as well. But the secondary for Michigan was pretty shut down, in terms of really getting, anything open. And that was also due to the fact that Michigan's pass rush was just absolutely destroying the Alabama offensive line. We saw plenty of pictures where, they brought delayed pressure, and I think it was one the edge rusher got around. I think the rookie left, the freshman left, the true freshman, and then there was another one like coming through the A gap unblocked, and it's just tough when you have those delayed fake pressures, and that the Michigan defense runs, and it was just a tough look. I mean, it was just a tough look for this Michigan team. No, for this Alabama team, excuse me. They couldn't get anything offensive going. And Milroe, I mean, we saw it on the first, I think it was the first couple of drives. He had the 1st and 10 that got sacked many yards, and then, he got tackled back when he was trying to escape. These Michigan DNs, they have the speed to catch up with Milroe. And I think that was something he was avoiding pretty much all season. These DNs not having the speed to catch up to him, so he breaks out for big runs. These Michigan edge rushers, they have that speed, and these linebackers have that speed. So that was also pretty key. And then, we saw plenty of times, the very low snaps for Alabama. I mean, there was a lot of problems, for them just, not really getting
for the first drive out of the half when they got to like midfield with ease, and then they had the back-to-back, bad snaps that killed that drive. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was literally back-to-back snaps that were in the dirt or so low that Milroe couldn't really, get himself set when the Michigan pass rush was pretty much already, in the backfield. So it was just a tough day, for the Alabama offensive line if you really had to blame anyone. But, on that final play, you do kind of have to give Milroe a little bit of blame there just because, there was a gap, on the side. If he just followed his guard, as the play kind of was looking as to be designed. Maybe, I don't know what the exact play call was from Saban, if it was, QB sneak going over the middle, but instead of the counter with following his guard on the outside. But whatever it was, it was just a tough scene for Alabama fans, obviously, trying to tie the game after Michigan had the quick score in overtime, pretty much 2 plays, and Blake Corum just took it into the end zone. But I'll stop rambling. It was definitely a very entertaining game. I knew it was going to be a lot more defense. We talked about both defenses pretty much being very 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 present. You talk about Alabama's defense on the first play of the game, they almost had a turnover, but obviously he stepped out of bounds and then obviously did not reestablish himself in bounds. So that was a close call for Michigan, but like that, it was just those kind of close calls, and obviously Michigan getting the big win. Obviously Jim Harbaugh's first pretty much college football playoff win, first bowl win in forever. He finally beats the SEC, defeated I'd say probably the worst Nick Saban team that we've seen in a little while, just in terms of how offensively their offensive line just was absolutely manhandled yesterday. But yeah, tough loss for Alabama, but obviously very entertaining game. Ari, what were your thoughts on that very entertaining Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird because like Michigan was up 13-10 at halftime, but it felt like they were up by a lot more than that. I mean, the only touchdown drive for Alabama was on the muff punt on the short field that they had. Other than that, they, like you said, they struggled to get much going on offense all half. I mean, I think I said they showed the stat on the broadcast that Milroe was the most sacked Alabama quarterback since like '96 for like a single season. So that just kind of goes to show you, the struggles that the Alabama offensive line had all year, and that obviously showed in this game as well. Then, like I said before, the first drive out of the half, you expect them to make some adjustments at halftime. They did that. They had like 2 or 3 straight first downs, first possession out of the half, and they looked good. And then you have the back-to-back bad snaps and make it like third and forever, basically. The first snap was literally rolling on the ground. The second snap, you could argue Milroe should have gotten, but it was still like so low that even if he caught it cleanly, it's hard to believe that he would have gotten a clean throw off just given the pressure that he was facing. But yeah, you have that happen out of the half, but then they go scoreless in the third quarter, so you're still in the game. And then I think it was early. Yeah, it was like the second play of the fourth where they took the lead 17-13. Then they get the force the 3 and out, and they have all the momentum, Alabama. Then Milroe has the fumble, and then momentum changes again, and then the missed field goal. And so there's like a kind of a roller coaster in that fourth quarter of momentum kind of changing. And after that missed field goal by Michigan, I thought Alabama would go and I thought they would go score a touchdown on that drive just with all the momentum that they had. They get held to a field goal. And then, obviously you have to get credit to McCarthy and the offense for scoring a touchdown when it mattered the most, at the end of regulation. You had the tip pass that, was obviously a little bit lucky that got them like inside the 10. And then there was a nice play call when all the focus was on Corum inside the 5 to, the play action. Roll out, find the wide-open guy for a touchdown. And then Alabama punts, and Michigan almost had the most disaster special teams ever. I mean, it was bad all game. And that would have capped it off with the muff punt, at the end of the fourth quarter that was like 1 yard away from being a safety. But yeah, then Michigan has all the momentum at that point. They score in 2 plays in overtime on their possession. And then, Milroe has the run inside the 10. And I think they ran it back-to-back times, if I remember correctly, after that, which is like that in of itself didn't make any sense for play calling in that kind of area. And then Burton gets the catch to like the 3. And then, obviously the play you talked about where he runs at the middle and 4th and goal when he had a little bit of a gap, to the edge. And yeah, it was obviously a bit anticlimactic to end like that. Like he didn't even come close, obviously on 4th and goal. Like you said, he basically tripped, but even if he didn't trip, he was basically running into a bunch. I think they had 7 guys in the line right there and 6 blockers. So running up the middle was never really gonna, work in that essence, just based off the numbers of, defenders versus offensive linemen in that area. But yeah, I mean, it was still entertaining. Obviously, overtime games, you can't ask for much more in terms of pure entertainment as a neutral fan, obviously. So, it was a fun game in that aspect.
Yeah, and then obviously, if we got to talk about performances, Jalen Milroe, I'm sorry, you were just not that guy yesterday. I mean, we saw many times obviously the fumble, on the QB read, which was looking nice. I think maybe it was the turf that, this Alabama team just was not used to. We saw a bunch of slipping and sliding, from this Alabama team yesterday. Didn't really, in terms of like big runs, they would try, and then, whether it be a slip or a fall or whatnot, and it kind of attributes to a final play that you just talked about. Jalen Murrow, it looked like he had a lane, but maybe he just ran into his own guy or just could not get anything and just literally just fell right in front of his line, and that was pretty much the game. But like you said, it was very entertaining. Sad it ended, just like that, and didn't really end, like on like a game-winning touchdown or anything like that, just on a game-winning stop. But like you said, very entertaining nonetheless. And now Michigan is going to the national championship game, and obviously now we'll get into the other game. Ari, I'm gonna let you dominate this, and I'll mute so I don't have to hear this, because obviously I'm a Coug, and that this is my worst nightmare. But all I have to say is, look, Texas didn't really show up until the fourth quarter. Not even until like 5 minutes until the fourth quarter, honestly. That's when they decided to show up and play some offense. Like I said about Jalen Milroe not being that guy. Quinn Ewers was not that guy either. I mean, you can credit the Huskies defensive line, getting pressure. What I thought Texas was going to do, they did not do that. But when you look at Texas in terms of their offense, it was very run heavy, but when you're down by that much, you can't really run the ball that much. So, and Quinn Ewers wasn't really getting anything going. We did see, I think it was like a little clip of Arch Manning, but we knew he wasn't going to come in at all. But they were saying he was throwing on the sideline. But it did obviously, at least end on a very, kind of climactic defensive stop as well. With that timeout to Dylan Johnson, forcing UW to take a timeout. That, and then obviously all the clock. The clock stopped, excuse me. That would have probably ran, obviously many, many seconds off the clock. And, that allowed UW to punt. But then obviously there was penalties, moved Texas a little closer. Then the 41-yard bomb, to set up Texas pretty much in first and goal with like 20 seconds or 25 seconds left on the clock. Obviously very interesting ending, and, obviously very entertaining ending. But, UW holds on, with one last defensive stand on the road. Tough day for me, 0-2, but, at least, you cast your other bet with UW straight up on the money line, and obviously, a little bit of plus money as well with that plus. I think you got a plus 142. So that was obviously nice to see from you. So I'll finish this off, and I know you're going to be mad at me at this, but obviously the luckiest team in football strikes again. Ari, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, the first half, it was 21-21 at half, but even then, like, I felt UW was a better team in the first half. I mean, 7 points came off the muff punt, for Texas on that short field. And then the last 7 points to tie the game was just, like, it gets so frustrating when you're, like, in a two-minute drill and the defense just plays the conservative, play 15, 20 yards off the defenders and just give them, easy 5 to 10 yards every play. And all they have to do is break off one tackle, and that turns into 20 plus yards. So, I mean, the game was tied at half, but Washington had the longer drives, the more sustainable drives that I think we're going to see more in the second half. Then they score out of the half, 28-21, and then you have the fumble. I think Texas fumbled twice in the second half, which is obviously brutal. And then I think the second one came just running into their own guy's butt, basically, and that caused that fumble. So yeah, I mean, and then UW basically crushes them in the third quarter, 10-0. They had the ball 13 minutes, I think, or 12 or 13 minutes out of the quarter, and then they have all of them going into the fourth quarter, and then but then after that fumble, they try to get too cute and run basically no clock off on that drive after the second fumble. Then Texas scores their touchdown, and they get 34-28. When UW could have ran more clock off on that last drive that they went, I think, 4 and out basically. Then Texas kicks a field goal, and on that touchdown, I thought that they were going to go for 2 on that touchdown because that would have made it a 5-point game. So a field goal, would have made it 8-point game instead of a 9-point game. Because then UW kicks a field goal on their next drive to make it a 9-point game. So that makes it a 2-possession game with like 5 or 6 minutes left, I want to say, at that point. It was like 3 minutes left at that point. Then Texas drives on the field, kicks their field goal, and then I don't know what the thought process was of having Dylan Johnson run the ball when he was already dealing with an injury at that point. Obviously you can't predict an injury on that exact play of third down, obviously, but I mean there's no reason not to kneel. I mean, people say, Dylan Johnson could have ran for a first down to just ice the game on that 3rd and 8, but you just had Penix kneel it, and there's basically 15 seconds left at that point for Texas to drive the entire field. If you can't stop him on that, then you don't deserve to win, at that point. And then you not only have that stops the clock, then you have the interference with the punt returner to give him 15 more yards. So it just seemed like everything was going wrong for UW at that point. Then you have the 2 incomplete passes, and then, like you said, the 40-yard pass that basically put them inside the 30. And then you have the incredible that I think it was one of those plays where whatever it was called on the field was going to stand. If they called it incomplete on the field, it would have stood on that 16-yard catch that brought them to the 12. And at that point, you basically have 4 passes to the end zone, to end the game. The first play, I don't know what that was when they basically just throw it. I think they're just trying to trick them, thinking, they're going to go to the end zone to try to do a little screen pass to the running back. And obviously that didn't work. And then you have 3, where your heart drops every time the ball's thrown to the end zone, no matter who you're rooting for, obviously. But yeah, I mean, the game didn't have to be as close as it was, but, obviously credit to Texas for, fighting till the end. I was already hoping for Penix to go to the Seahawks, and now I'm even more so hoping for Penix to go to the Seahawks after this performance. Obviously, the only knock on him is I think he tore his ACL twice, if I'm not mistaken, at least once, but he has a ton of injuries to his knee, and so that's really the only knock on Michael Penix as a prospect. I mean, he makes every throw that you could ask for. His awareness in the pocket of avoiding sacks, I think, is top notch in the country. His accuracy, he showed a little bit of his mobility despite the knee injuries that he can, he's obviously not a super mobile quarterback, but he can make plays with his legs when he needs to. So I think Michael Penix balled out. Obviously, the Texas secondary struggled, but I think a lot of the throws Penix made were just, he couldn't have, if he threw them anywhere else, they would have been either intercepted or, knocked down. So Penix balled out. But, like I said, it was an exciting game that came down, basically to the last few plays of the game that Texas, had a chance to throw into the end zone to win. And also, even though, I was surprised Texas went away from the run as early as they did. I mean, they averaged over 6 yards a carry on the ground. And it seemed like at times, even when the game was still, tight, they were trying to throw it more than I thought they would have. And that's obviously going to be the big concern for Washington against Michigan, is stopping the run, obviously. So I was surprised that Texas stopped running the ball, like they did. I mean, they average over 6 yards per carry on the ground for the game. And, it seemed like heading into the game, I thought the secondary was going to be more of an issue for UW in the run defense, but ended up being the run defense in the first quarter that was the bigger issue. So I was surprised that Texas stopped running the ball, by even the second quarter.
Well, you know what? I'm just glad, college football is in the rearview mirror. We can finally move on. Don't have to worry about anything else. Obviously two semifinals. Obviously very entertaining. But obviously review college football in the front view mirror. Obviously in the horizon, college basketball. Great. Obviously to have to end the season on some great college football with Michigan and Washington both winning. But I am personally not invested in that championship game. I know you are, but I will not be placing anything. No money, nothing at all. But we move on to today's slate. Obviously, we have finally back my favorite college basketball. I've been waiting for this ever since those bowl games, that nonsense that I've been having to deal with, with games like Liberty, not even showing up to gosh. But finally, we're going to get into some college basketball. We're going to first toe to this Maryland game against Purdue. And I'm taking Maryland plus 6.5 here at home. This is a really bad spot for Purdue. I feel like on the road, they are one of the worst they are a team that struggles, and against a really defensive team, like as the Terrapins, especially at home, they play a lot better at home. They're a lot better defensively. You look at the splits, against this team on the road versus at home, their differentials, on the road, -3 at UAB, -17 at Villanova, and then -12, I believe that was at Indiana. But, at home, this team has, and they also, in that neutral site game, they beat UCLA, by 9, but at home they're one of the more dominant teams, in terms of their point differential. So that that home court advantage we always talk about plays a big role, and especially in Big Ten play, I feel like this is going to be one of those conferences like the Pac-12, where all the teams always beat each other up. We always talk about, the Pac-12 for football, when they always played each other, they always beat each other up, kind of cannibalized. That's the Big Ten for basketball, and I think this is a really bad spot for a Purdue team that obviously leads on Zach Edey a lot. And then we always talked about Purdue, and how their offense, is led by Zach Edey, but their backcourt with Fletcher Lawyer, and I forgot Braden Smith. Yeah, I forgot the other two. Yeah, those two. Yeah, it's always a hit or miss with those two, in terms of, if they're really consistently shooting the ball. And I think, Maryland's defense can defend the guard play well. So I feel like, if those two aren't shooting well and, if Edey is all they have to depend on, it's not going to be a pretty night, in a very defensive game. So I'm just taking Maryland on the points here. That line was, I think, opening at like 7.5 to 8. Now that's gone all the way down to 6.5. I think Vegas knows that, Maryland's going to keep this really tight. They could pull off the upset. I would sprinkle it, but, I think Maryland's just going to keep it close. This Purdue team, obviously getting all those big wins. I think Purdue's just in a really bad spot, traveling on the road. This is their first true, Big Ten road game, environment, I'd say, going to Maryland, and, this Maryland team, one of the better defensive teams. They've had a little bit of a struggle to start their college basketball season, but, I like them in the spot. So I'm taking Maryland just on the points here at plus 6.5. And then going to another Big Ten game, I'm taking Wisconsin on the points here at -5.5. That's -120 on DraftKings against Iowa. And I'm just fading Iowa on the road. That's my favorite system. Iowa cannot shoot on the road. We talk about how Iowa can always shoot at home. I remember we were both picking college basketball earlier in the season. You mentioned, this team at home is one of the best scoring teams at home, but offensively, on the road, they can't shoot the ball. And, obviously Big Ten, here we go. In Wisconsin at home, a little bit better defensively, 1 and 2. They are a little bit better shooting at home. This team is now obviously back in the rankings, after, not really having, the greatest start to their season. And that's probably just because they've had a tough, conference, tough, pretty much schedule to deal with. But now this Wisconsin team, 9-3 on the season, we talk about, their offense kind of being the key reason. They don't turn over the ball, which is kind of all you really need in a game like this. You don't turn over the ball, and you can hit your free throws. And then obviously at home, they've beaten some good teams, obviously, after pretty much that slacking that Arizona gave them back on the 9th of last year. It's pretty, they've hammered out some good wins, against, Chicago State and Jacksonville State. But, this Iowa team, the thing about Iowa is the fact that, obviously their offense is kind of all they need on, but they don't really play that much defense. And in a game like this where, if your offense can't do much, your defense kind of needs to step up, and Iowa doesn't really have that great of a defense. I just don't think, they're going to keep this close, if Wisconsin can shoot the ball at home, and that's what they can do. So I'm taking Wisconsin at -5.5, at home. That's -120 on DraftKings. And then going to the ACC here, I'm going to take Wake Forest straight up, just on the money line today. That's -125 on DraftKings. I am fading Boston College because I just don't think their offense is that great. They don't turn over the ball that much, but they're only making about 47% of their shots. They're barely hitting 36% from behind the arc, about 80 points a game, which is pretty decent. But this Wake Forest team is just a lot better, in terms of their offense. They average about 80 points a game. They're hitting consistently, they're all almost top 50 in pretty much scoring, in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage. They hit their free throws. They're hitting about 80% from the line. So, when it gets to that foul trouble point, you really want to depend on the team that can hit their free throws. And, they're hitting about 80%. That's 6th in the nation, which is really, really great. Their defense, they allow they have 5 blocks per game, which is about 50th in the country. which basically meaning, they can get that inside pressure. And they got some scorers too. Don't sleep. Do not sleep on this team. Andrew Carr is pretty much who they like to lean to a lot, 15 points, per game inside. And then on the guard play, you also have Hunter Salas. That's who they like to lean on, in terms of their guard play. He's averaging 18 points per game. That's about 30th in the country, I believe, or pretty high up there. But, I just think this Boston College team should, at home, I think this is a great buy spot for Wake Forest at minus 125. You're getting the better offensive team and defensive team on the road. And even though BC, obviously, they've had a lot of luck at home, I just think this is a really bad spot for them. They're playing some of the best competition they've had pretty much in a month. They haven't played anyone as good. And the last time they played a good team like this, it was NC State. NC State took them to overtime, and I believe NC State won by 6 on the road. And I think Wake Forest and NC State are on that same level. So give me Wake Forest just straight up to win on the money line. You're getting them at this price at minus 125. I think that's a great price. So give me Wake Forest at minus 125. And finally, this is the system play I've been talking about all season. Here it is in the flesh. We have to take it. I'm taking Pittsburgh plus 4.5 at home. They're facing UNC, and I talked about it. A ranked opponent going on the road to face an unranked opponent where the spread is less than 5. You take the home dog on the points. That's hitting at a 60-something% clip. I want to say about 63% clip this season. That's great ROI. Look, this Pittsburgh team is, I'd say, not the greatest opponent for this UNC team in turn, but inside they do have a good matchup, and I think that's going to be the reason as to why this Pittsburgh team could potentially maybe pull off the upset. But I just like them on the points today. They're just way better defensively at home, especially just not only at home but just way better defensively. They average about 5 blocks per game. They average about 6 steals per game. They will out rebound. They can out rebound. They average about 40-something rebounds per game, and that's about I think 30th in the nation compared to UNC. They're not really averaging a lot of rebounds, and they're obviously more offensive. We've seen this UNC team be a better offensive scoring team. With RJ Davis, Armando Bacot, the list goes on and on. Harrison Ingram, Cormac Ryan. We've seen how good this UNC offense is, but this is just a bad spot for them. They're playing a really good defensive team on the road. This is, I believe, their first true ACC road game. I'm pretty sure it is, but I think this may be their first ACC game of the season. Actually, no. They did play FSU earlier, and they did barely win at home. But now they got to go on to play Pitt on the road. This is it's a system play. I love it here. You're getting Pittsburgh at plus 4.5. I believe it's minus 120. That line, I think, did go down on DraftKings to plus 4 at minus 108. I take it at plus 4. I take it at plus 4.5. Just buy it up a little bit just on the points. I think Pittsburgh will probably make it a 4-point game. For that push potential, I just take it at 4.5. Buy it a little bit, but I just think not try to get screwed over by the push potential. So those are my 4 picks today. Back on the college basketball court, give me Maryland on the points at plus 6.5. Give me Wisconsin on the points at minus 5.5. Fading Iowa on the road. Wake Forest money line on the road at Boston College, and then Pittsburgh at home plus 4.5 against UNC. Those are my 4 picks today. Ari, what have you cooked up for this Tuesday?
Yeah, it's a pretty small NBA slate, so I'm just going with one play, and this is kind of an ugly play because the Warriors have not been playing well. They've lost 3 in a row, but they're playing at home. The line's moving in their favor against the Magic. The Magic are played Phoenix. It's not as bad as it might look because they're traveling from Phoenix and not Orlando, to Golden State. But the line, like I said, the line's going in the Warriors' favor from 2.5 to 3 this morning. Steph Curry's been shooting terribly, the past 3 or 4 games. I think this is kind of a game where he can kind of get right at home here against Orlando. I've talked about Orlando being good defensively, so I think that's why they're going to make it close. I think Orlando, I don't see it being like a huge blowout. But I like the Warriors to defend home court here and kind of they kind of have to start getting on track. I think they're like the 8 seed right now, 7, 8, something like that in the West. Obviously, there's still a lot of season left. Obviously, it's still early, but I'm kind of looking for the Warriors to kind of find their rhythm soon. I think that can start here. Their first game of 2024 here, beating the Magic by ideally at least 4 here at minus 3. At home tonight against Orlando.
You mentioned, this Warriors team, and I obviously as a Warriors fan, I've had my ups and downs with this team, but you mentioned as a personal, all bias aside, I do think this is a great spot to buy back on the Warriors. They have lost. You mentioned three in a row. They're not really playing their best basketball, but you mentioned going back at home. That's kind of where they thrive off of. They play a lot better at home, and obviously two bad losses. Against the Heat and the Mavs. I just think those two teams are a lot better. But then and in this game, you mentioned the lines going in their favor. I think this is a one of those buy in terms of a system buying on a low team right now. Against a really good team and traveling on the road. I think this is maybe in terms of travel or whatnot. I just think this is a great spot to finally back the Warriors. So I'm taking that as well. Warriors -3. Hopefully we win, but I do like a -3. Potentially for that push potential. And then going back to my picks, as I have the loaded college basketball slate, Maryland +6.5, Wisconsin -5.5. I'm taking Wake Forest straight up on the money line. And then Pittsburgh, our system play, we're taking them +4.5 at home against the UNC. You can find all of these plays on our posted card on our Twitter, AKP Sports Talk. We will have our cards posted momentarily after this video. But that's going to do it for this episode of AKP Sports Talk. That is Ari. I'm Korea. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow for some more best bets. Have a great day, guys.